together, providing one particular composed solution or service to you. And we believe it will be the underlying global infrastructure to form these flexible and agile business networks or business webs I mentioned. Now, the second topic deals with the Internet of Things, as I mentioned. And the vision of the Internet of Things is that we have this infrastructure that allows us to bundle the edge with the applications through some means of communication in a way that we transparently can access this information. And aspects that we have to deal with is we have to expect massive volume of data to occur. And this data needs to be managed in a way that the business applications can consume it. So we need to understand from a business process perspective, as Michael mentioned at the beginning, as well as from the business applications perspective, what kind of data am I interested in this particular business process? How do I get this information? How do I consume that information? Aspects that we are interested in will be the identity of an object, as mentioned, the location of the object maybe, and some context information about the environment that I may be able to sense. And of course, if you look at that, you will figure out that not all the time it makes sense that the application that is now calculating the outcome based on this information is in the back end of the system, so in a server-side application, but should be performed right there where the object itself is located, because we'll envision that in particular with sensor nodes and embedded systems, there's significant compute power out there on the edge. And so we, from a business applications perspective, have to think about exposing business applications now to the edges and down to the nodes, down to the objects themselves, rather than keeping all these applications in the back end. So we enhance the business logic on the item, as we say, instead of just providing the data back and having the computing on the back end. We are exploring that in a context where we say, what is the added value that a company like SAP can provide to the Internet of Things, or vice versa, how can we best leverage the Internet of Things? And what we can see is that SAP is being used in many different sectors. These sectors cooperate among each other, and here's an example on how such a chain can look like. So the circled arc here should imply the flow of a particular object, of a particular good that is being produced. There were suppliers that provided parts of it that had been produced. It gets to the wholesaler. In between are carriers. It ends up in a retail. The consumer buys it, and at a certain point in time, it has some services required, and maybe in context of product recall or in other cases like brand protection, we have certain governmental organizations that may be interested to check out that particular object, or in terms of taxation. Now, as we can see, the object, in this particular case, the good, is moving from one sector to another, right? And it comes back to all the questions I raised earlier. So how do we address that? How do we find the object? How do we know where the object is? How do we know the history of that object? Well, one could think of, we store all this information onto the object. That's one way to think about that. Problem with that is you have dispersed information. You don't know when you get that information. There's very little known about the object other than the object itself has all the knowledge. So this approach, we believe, is not the right way to really have all these different participants benefiting from the information. So our vision is rather that the object is rather lean in terms of what kind of information it provides, and will store all the information associated with the object at these different places along the chain, wherever possible. And if it's not possible anywhere there, like at the consumer place, there is some other place where we can store this information. And what we then do is we wanted to access this kind of information accordingly to the specific service needs that someone would have, and thus we provide a service that allows to globally access this Internet of Things and provide and get the information into the service as it's being needed. Give you one example for this. Consider an object to be identified for the question of, is that object a real object or a faked one? So do we have a counterfeited product here, or do we have a real product? Yeah? Think about a blister of medicine, and you want to be assured that once you take that medication, that it's the real one. It's the one that you were anticipated to use. Someone can think of that the manufacturer in this case is providing a unique identification mechanism to identify the object and to secure that this object, and a mechanism to check whether that object is being real or not. Various ways on how that could be done. Let's think about a simple solution here. It's an RFID chip that has been put some security key on it. So it's encrypted, and at a later stage, let's consider the government. We have customs. Customs gets that object when passing the border. They're checking the truck. They're taking out that object, reading that particular information from the RFID chip, and wants to verify that whether that's a real one or a fake one. So instead of asking the manufacturer, they ask this global service. Why should they do that, you may ask? Well, it's very simple. We have one customs. I guess in Australia too, that's only one customs, right? But we have hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands of companies who manufacture goods. Should now Australian customs have hundreds of thousands of application access to all these different manufacturers in order to say, okay, this is a product from Nestle, so I have to check with the Nestle system. This is now a product from SAP, as a better example, from HP. Now I have to access the HP system and so forth. You can immediately understand that the customs will never introduce such a system, will never use it, unless someone would come up and say, here's a central service. Don't worry which product, just tell me the identification, tell me the particular information that you have, and I'll take care of it and manage it accordingly. Whether that particular service provider has the information or has to provide that further to somebody else, that's a different story. So in that case, maybe the information is not stored at all in the global service, but we can identify it's an HP product, so we send it to the HP verification system, and the HP verification system provides the information back, and that's then being routed to customs in a transparent manner. Just one out of many ideas that we could envision. What else is being possible? I'd like to hand over now to Max, and he will talk a little bit about how this aspect is being set in context of ubiquitous computing. Max.